What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. It's a Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 48 on this Monday, January the 8th, 2024. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you with Sooners Illustrated on the Oklahoma 24/7 Sports YouTube channel on a Monday. Guys, lots to get to. Oklahoma's hired a new DC. They're staying hot in the transfer portal. Basketball keeps winning, both men and women. A lot to talk about on a Monday, but we'll dive in with the big news, I think, right now for Oklahoma football, certainly in the last week or so. Tom and I, we hopped on, we did the reaction show last Thursday. Ted Roof gone. They part ways. They didn't waste a lot of time finding his replacement. Haven't officially announced it yet. Would imagine it'll happen soon. But per our own Matt Zenitz and various other outlets as well, Zac Alley, come on down, going to be the next DC at Oklahoma. He's currently the DC at Jacksonville State. Very, very young. Some discrepancy on the age. Tom's pretty confident, 30 years old, so one of the youngest coordinators, in the country, certainly at the level of Oklahoma, a major Power 5 blue blood program, comes aboard for Oklahoma. Reaction. Obviously, we'll break this down. We have a lot of time to try and digest what the hire will mean and what it will look like when we get to the season, but when this name popped up first for you guys, what was the thought? Because, Tom, you and I did the reaction show. Alley was one of the names we brought up as a possibility, worked with Brent Venables, obviously, at Clemson as a sports staffer and developed into a role beyond that for several years there at Clemson. Got his own defense, Jacksonville State, did well this past year, and now he gets obviously a huge upgrade in job and promotion coming to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Like you said, we mentioned him on our reaction podcast last Thursday. We had him on our hot board that lasted all of 3 hours before the news broke that he was going to be the guy. So he's very clearly someone that Brent Venables, zeroed in on quickly. Like, he got his guy. He went out and got him. No question about who else he wanted. It was Zac Alley. Just a guy that's been on a very rapid rise. And, he started out at Clemson as a student assistant. His first job in 2011 was basically rearranging seats in the defensive meeting room for Kevin Steele, who himself is a very good and talented and storied defense coordinator, currently at Alabama, was at Auburn before that, Tennessee to Miami. He's been all over the place. But then his last 7 years there, I had someone tell me, described him as Brent Venables' right-hand man for 7 years, basically, as a student. Obviously not as involved as, the on-field coaches and all that, but he is someone who basically Brent took under his wings for 7 years there at Clemson, first as a student assistant, then as a graduate assistant. He worked with defensive tackles, he worked with linebackers, and he's just someone that very quickly latched on to Brent Venables and knew what he wanted to do, and is basically a Brent Venables disciple through and through. If you listen to him do an interview, his cadence, the way he talks, it sounds like Brent Venables. He teaches the defense, he executes it, he runs it just like Brent Venables would. As someone else who worked with him, told me, it's not diluted. This is Brent Venables' defense, and he's had nobody else to kind of really influence the way that he coaches defense. He spent a couple of years at Boise State, but that was as a position coach. At ULM. Hired in 27 as the youngest defensive coordinator at the FBS level. Terry Bowden took a chance on him there because he wanted somebody to run what Brent Venables was running, because he was a GA at Clemson the prior 2 years. As a 60-something-year-old graduate assistant, he worked some with Brent Venables that last year before he took the ULM job. So he's just somebody that Brent Venables clearly trusts this guy. He's someone that I think that when, he gets here, it's going to be, Brent can take a little bit more hands-off approach. I still think he's, obviously going to have his fingerprint on the defense. He's going to, have the final say in things, but Zac Alley is someone that he can trust to teach it, to call it, to run it just like he wants to. So he doesn't have to be involved. He can be more focused on what it's going to take to be a head coach in the SEC and get this program competing for playoff spots.
You said it, Tom. I know I didn't get to say my piece last time with the Ted Roof, parting ways. I'm actually kind of saddened by that, Josh. It was a guy I was really building a relationship with over the last couple of weeks. I was like, it's going to be a really good source for me down the line. I was thinking that was going to be the case, but He's already out of there. So now I got to figure out a different situation for that on recruiting wise and things like that. So we'll look into that. But Zac Alley seems like the best guy for the situation. I know when Ted Roof, parted ways, that was one of the names I put on the board because we were all talking about it. It was like one of the guys that we should look after. And it looks like that's the case. I mean, it's not been announced officially, but it looks like that's going to be the case. It's Zac Alley. And it just makes perfect sense because Brent Venables, doesn't really want to be a defensive coordinator all the time anymore. He wants to be a head coach. You get somebody that thinks like you, somebody that you taught every situation, all the, scenarios. You get somebody like that on your side. It just makes perfect sense. I mean, the age doesn't matter at all in the situation, as y'all pointed out. Brent Venables was just about the same age when he got to OU when he first got to OU. Yep. So, it all just points to good signs for OU. They got somebody that Brent Venables knows he's going to run it the way I want him to run it. He's going to be my guy. I can do it I can just focus on head coaching things. I can focus on the referees and things like that during the game and worry about the situation as my coordinators get used to calling plays and things like that. So it's a good situation all around, and that's pretty much what it is now.
Yeah, a quick thing on the age thing, because I know that there was a lot of discussion whether he's 29 or 30. I'm like 99% confident that he is 30 years old because when he was hired at ULM in January of 2020,
you were on it. Yeah,
he was 27. I saw a tweet from Jacksonville State, I think last April, wishing him a happy birthday. So 3 years later, he's 30 or he'll be 31 in April.
Sure.
He's 30 right now.
Journalism.
I had no idea we were doing a hunt for the birthday. I didn't know that.
There's a lot of questions about it because there were some reports that he was 29, some that he was 30. Either way, he's a guy who's clearly a very bright mind. He was on the 24/7 Sports 30 under 30 list a few years ago when he was 27. And look, he's got 3 years of experience as a defensive coordinator already at group of 5 programs. He's done really well in that time. When he got to ULM, it was a total rebuild. That's why you hire a coach that's been around like Terry Bowden at that point in his career. It's a guy that's going to be there to try to help rebuild programs like he tried to do at Akron, like he did at Sanford before that, stuff like that. But he had a really good impact on that ULM defense that first year. They improved in I think 11 of 14 key defensive stats. Rich Rodriguez, who was the offensive coordinator at ULM that year, gets the Jacksonville State job. He brings Zac Alley with him, and that was a program that was transitioning from FCS to FBS. And you look at what they did this year. I think they went 9-4. Made a bowl game. In their second year with Zac Alley, they finished 33rd in scoring defense, allowing just 21.2 points per game, 8th in the country in turnovers forced, 25, 12th in yards per play allowed, 4.82 yards, 22nd in the country in third down efficiency, holding opponents below 33%, and 35th in red zone touchdown rate, giving up touchdowns on 55% of trips inside the 20. I don't care how tough that schedule is. Obviously, it's not going to be super tough because you're Jacksonville State, you're playing in the Conference USA, you're going to face a lot of lower tier teams, so to speak. Those are impressive numbers, and Zac Alley did a really good job calling that defense. Like I said, clearly a bright young mind. I was crunching some of the kind of advanced numbers because look, we know Brent Venables likes to blitz. That's kind of been his calling card, through his career. He'll send anybody at any time, basically. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville State this past year, their blitz rate, they blitzed on 44% of opponent dropbacks. Opponents completed 57% of those passes for 1,027 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. They got Jacksonville State got pressure on 51% of those blitzes with 22 sacks, which was about 11%. Right. Yeah. And if you guys remember late in the season, we asked Brent Venables about Oklahoma's sack numbers, because a lot of teams are trying to get the ball out quicker. And he said, in the NFL, a sack rate of about 10% when the quarterback's getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less is really good. So 11% sack rate is pretty solid for what Jacksonville State was doing. Just to give you an idea of kind of how Zac Alley likes to attack an offense from a defensive perspective.
Yeah,
and you got to think
Jacksonville, advanced metrics, advanced analytics, things like that, love what Jacksonville State was doing last year. And, I will say real quick, too, and we'll turn it over to you, James, that, I'm sure there's been a little, and I've seen a little bit of it, the sentiment of, does Oklahoma need to go hire a guy from Jacksonville State? To bring in a guy up from, a program that was FCS, like Tom said, recently, 1 year in FBS. I'm reminded, and it maybe not a comparison that people want to hear, but I'm reminded of 2015. Oklahoma needed an offensive coordinator, and they hired this guy from East Carolina, and people were like, East Carolina? And that guy's Lincoln Riley, and they had explosive offenses, and it worked out just fine. Not of apples to apples, but you can find guys, just because they're at a lower level doesn't mean it's not going to rise up and work out just the same. So
yeah, as I had someone tell me, no matter what age you are, no matter what school you're at, if you can coach, you can coach. That's what matters. And Zac Alley can clearly coach, and Brent Venables believes he can coach and is going to trust him with running that defense. Yeah.
And as you said, with the age thing, I also want to point out, I mean, it's not 100% certain, but you would expect a guy that's 30 years old to kind of relate to the recruits a little bit better than an older guy. So, I mean, I can feel like it's going to help in that area as well when you go and try to get guys from, different states and things like that, somebody that can relate to the guys really well. So that could be an advantage here, his age. It could be an advantage.
Yeah. No, I like the hire. I approve. I think it's going to, Brent Venables, we talked about it on Thursday, Tom and I, on the reaction show. Brent Venables needs a guy to take some of the load off him. He needs his Dan Lanning to Kirby Smart, or Kirby Smart was for Nick Saban. He needs that. Zac Alley could be that. And I'm not saying he's Kirby Smart or Dan Lanning, but he could be. He could be. And I think that this fits that mold a little bit. And one of the missing pieces of Oklahoma to get to that next level, it felt to me at least, was kind of that DC who can really elevate and help Brent Venables and get that group to the next level. Ted Roof was not that really. He did what he was expected to do for 2 years, and now you're trying to get to that next step. And I think Zac Alley can certainly help you get there. And like Tom said, looking at old interviews, and I found that Yoel Monroe practice video of him working is like that. That is exactly what Brent Venables is like. Even like the mannerisms, and it's kind of freaky almost. Like he feels like he could be his son or something. It's pretty dead on, and you can see why Venables likes him, and you can see why Alley looks up to him, because they're very similar in the way they interact. I look forward to getting to talk to him for the first time whenever that does happen. Obviously, they haven't announced it officially yet. Would expect that very soon. Could happen as soon as today. It could be before we even get this show up. It could happen. But I look forward to getting to learn more about him as we go, because he is a young guy and it'll be a breath of fresh air. And this whole staff is pretty young, in general. And Brent Venables is just recreating Clemson, which is not a bad thing to do. You have all these guys. Bates, Chavis, now obviously Alley, Ted Roof previously, James Skalski. He's just remaking Clemson. And obviously Clemson won multiple national titles, beat Alabama a couple times. So not a bad thing to try and recreate.
Yeah, just one other thing. Again, people are going to be like, oh, he's only 30 years old. What has he done? He's been a defense coordinator at the FBS level for 3 years. And it's important to note, it's not like he was a defensive coordinator for a head coach that was a defensive-minded head coach, like he is about to be with Brent. Terry Bowden was a long-time offensive-minded coach. Rich Rodriguez, obviously an offensive guy. These are guys that gave him just free reign of the defense, and look at what he did with those opportunities.
100%. I like it. We'll see. Time will tell. But it feels like a good hire, at least on paper, for Oklahoma. And like we kind of said right at the top of this, clearly Brent Venables had a guy in mind. He knew what he wanted. I assume with how quickly the report came out from our own Matt Zenitz, you feel like Oklahoma probably had established this was where we're going before they even made the move officially with Roof, obviously. So it's going to be fun to see how it plays out. And we'll have a lot of time to look into it and figure out what to expect. But Zac Alley looks like he's going to be the new DC at Oklahoma next year. All right. Shifting over to transfer portal. Oklahoma's been on a heater since last week's show. Last time Tom and I talked on Thursday, or the show that I did with Colin earlier in the day, Oklahoma has picked up 3 commits in the transfer portal. Could be more as soon as today as well. But we'll hit each of the 3 here. Starting, we'll just go chronological order. Oklahoma's got a kicker. Tyler Keltner from Florida State committed last week. Didn't really kick there. Had 1 season there. They didn't really use him. He was the guy at East Tennessee State for 4 years before that. The most simple way I can put it, his numbers in terms of just pure, just straight up percentages are a little bit better than Zach Schmidt. Not a ton better, a little better. I think it's like 75% to 71. But he has a much bigger leg. He's made multiple kicks of over 50 yards. Zach Schmidt just simply can't do that, or at least he hasn't to this point. So I don't know if he's going to be the guy or not, but he's another option. You have Gavin Marshall. You have Liam Evans. Schmidt is still on the team. So you have several guys. You have a competition. You see where it falls. But at the very least, they have another option here with Tyler Keltner, the kid from Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing there is that they're giving themselves options. They didn't have that this year, even when Zach Schmidt struggled. Obviously, Gavin Marshall dealt with some injuries. Liam Evans just signed. So they're going to have a competition. And when you have kicking issues and you're not confident that you are bringing in like one of the top kickers in the country necessarily, the best you can do is give yourself options and let it play out in the offseason, see who's going to be that guy. And obviously Tyler Keltner's a guy that's got lots of experience, was at Eastern Tennessee State. Now he's spent the last season at Florida State, even though he didn't get many opportunities, but he's a guy that's experienced and has proven that he is able to kick. I think he's 76% career kicker. So he's got solid, decent numbers. I don't know if he's going to be the guy, but at least it's adding more competition to that room because they need to be better there.
Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. It's just getting more competition in the room, getting more guys in there, getting to be able to work off of each other, and just have a better overall special teams unit. I mean, that's the case. I don't think we pointed out that they got Seth Freeman on the podcast yet, the number one long snapper. I mean, it's something that can go under the rug because not a lot of people pay attention to that, but. You getting a guy like that from in-state, this number one long snapper in the country, to go along with Liam Evans, who is his teammate already, number 7 kicker in the country. I mean, there's a lot of things they're trying to bring in and really help out this special teams unit. I mean, it didn't go as well as they wanted it to this year, and so it just makes sense. Bring in more guys, bring in experienced guys, bring in highly talented guys to come in and all work together and figure this thing out. And you'll find your guy by the time the season starts, I'm sure, of who's going to be a best kicker. And I think it'll look a lot better next year.
Yeah, and, not for nothing, too, but, I mean, Keltner, like we said, 4 years East Tennessee State, 1 at Florida State. So he's going to be a 6th-year guy. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. You assume, maybe incorrectly, I don't know. You know what happens when you assume, I guess, but he's got 1 year left. He's probably going somewhere where he feels like he can win the job, or he's been told that he's got a very real chance to win the job. He's got 1 year left trying to do enough to maybe get an NFL tryout at the next level or whatever. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind too. And I would, if you're making me handicap it, probably he's the favorite to be the kicker next year. It feels pretty wide open. But we'll see. Like we said a couple times there, another option at the very least. You needed a kicker, you went and got one.
He broke a lot of records in East Tennessee, so he does have.
He has a bigger leg,
skill set, and he has a bigger leg. Yes, he didn't really get a lot of opportunities at Florida State. I think he only got to kick one time at an extra point, so it wasn't a lot to go off of at Florida State. So, I mean, he is a talented guy. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm not really sure who I would give the kicker, who's going to be the kicker just yet. Yeah, I don't know. I really like Liam Evans just because I've known the guy for so long. I mean, it's one of those situations where I've built a relationship with him already. So I don't know off the top of my head who's going to be it.
Yeah, I don't know who it's going to be either. But if you were to, give me odds on Zach Schmidt versus the field, I'm taking the field.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think Oklahoma can go into 2024 with Zach Schmidt as its kicker after the struggles the last 2 years. So, I mean, like if he ends up being the best guy, he ends up being the best option for them. But again, they're giving themselves options. They're going to find somebody to step up into that role.
Yeah, been a weak spot under Brent Venables last couple of years. I'm trying to shore that up. Maybe Tyler Keltner is the answer. Time will tell. Elsewhere in the portal, Caden Woolard, Miami of Ohio defensive end, comes aboard. This is a guy that we've talked about a couple of times. Colin had said, keep an eye on this one. He came to town, he visited, liked what he saw. Boom, committed to Oklahoma over the weekend there at the tail end of last week. That was on that Thursday, which just had a million things happen. All the Ted Roof, Zac Alley stuff happened the same day that Keltner committed and Caden Woolard committed. He was really good at Miami, Ohio. 41 total tackles last year, 12 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, which you're going to like that. Like Tom kind of referenced earlier, the sack numbers were not where Oklahoma wanted. There's more to it than just literally counting the number of sacks, obviously, but you also still want sacks. Let's not pretend like you don't want sacks and create big negative plays. Caden Woolard is good at that. You figure Ethan Downs is back. He's going to start. Trace Ford is presumably back. Hasn't announced anything officially. I would anticipate personally that he is back. And you got Cade Woolard, PJ Adebawore, the guys you're bringing in, obviously from the freshman class, Okoye, Gilmore. Another option here, I feel like at the very least, Cade Woolard's going to be a pretty heavy rotation guy. I mean, this is a guy who's going to play for you, I think, right away next year. Is that where you guys kind of fall on it? This seems like a nice ad for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be the starter opposite of Ethan right now, but like you said, at the very least, he's going to give you an experienced rotational piece, kind of like some of these other defensive linemen they brought in last year. Obviously, like interior guys like Dejon Terry and Jacob Lacey and, like you said, Trace Ford. Those are all guys that came in and contributed immediately after playing at a FBS school before that. And I think that's what you're getting in Caden Woolard. He led the MAC in sacks with 9.5. Like you said, he was 6th in tackles for loss. And this is a guy that, Oklahoma was, going after Purdue edge rusher Nick Scourton. And, he was one of the best available guys. But as soon as he came off the board, Oklahoma zeroed in on Caden Woolard and got it done. They did not waste any time on that. Obviously he was visiting last week, and they, took care of business as quick as they could. And now they're addressed a spot of need. That's just what they've been doing in the portal, supplementing the roster and filling some key needs.
It just makes me feel more comfortable about this defensive line. And I was already really high on them. I mean, bringing a guy like this in, and you kind of seeing a similar formula here. I mean, they're bringing an experienced guy to go with high talented guys that are on that defensive line. And as we talked about over time, building to a national championship team, it takes, steps to get there. This is one of those things. I think you're going to have a guy that can help coach a little bit these guys, show them the right way to do things. And then your high talented guys are going to be really, really good in two years from now. I mean, that's really what it is right now. Yeah. So bringing him in, it helps you in the moment as well, because we talked about his sack numbers, what he did last year, his former school. A lot of things are working well for him. So just bringing all this together, I mean, OU's on the right path. This is the way you build it. I mean, we're seeing it right now over time. And this could be the one to help him out a lot. So I really like that. I really like the move. I really like it.
Definitely. So we'll see where he fits into the fold down the road. Tom, you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on top of the sack numbers and the tackles for loss, I mean, he had 58 total pressures in 12, 13 games last year. So he's been effective at getting in the backfield and, at the very least, impacting the quarterback.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll see where he fits in. Another addition, they stayed hot. Michael Tarquin, USC offensive tackle. Obviously, offensive line has been a big talking point for fans last month or so, trying to remake this thing. It's the third portal addition they've made now on the offensive line. Spencer Brown, obviously, way back they started this whole thing from Michigan State, Febechi Nwewu from North Texas, and now Michael Tarquin from USC. Made 7 starts last year for the Trojans, was then benched. Was a guy they used at Florida for 4 years. So he's a veteran guy, played several years at Florida, last year USC. So he's a 1-year guy, plug and play, you're hoping, next season for Oklahoma. The spin zone here, if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're looking at this saying, this guy got benched, right, after 7 games at USC last year. The spin zone here is that he was much better at Florida, and that can be written off maybe if you want, as an OU fan, to the way USC utilized him. They had him lose some weight, different strength and conditioning program, well documented with Benny Wiley than what he'll have at Oklahoma with Jerry Schmidt. He'll be a totally different guy. So it's almost like how much stock you even put on it, because they're going to totally remake his body here at Oklahoma over now, the winter workouts and in the spring. But it feels like, a potential option. I mean, you figure if Brown and Sexton are your tackles, he can be a reserve rotation option, or maybe you could look at moving him inside. He hasn't really done that, but that's where you need help more than anything. But kind of going back to what we talked about with Kelton earlier, more options for Oklahoma here with adding Michael Tarquin in.
Yeah, I mean, we saw them do this kind of last year. Guys like Caleb Schaefer, experienced starters who came in just to provide depth. And that's what you need right now, given all the pieces that you're losing along the offensive line. They've obviously got a couple other guys, like you said, bringing in a couple of, really good freshmen that might be able to compete pretty early on. But yeah, they just need guys up front. And the fact that he's got a lot of experience is great. Like, people are going to look at what happened at USC last year, but I mean, until that last game of the year, he only gave up 1 sack He gave up 2 against UCLA, but he had a 95.7% pass blocking efficiency. So he was pretty good in pass protection. And obviously you're going to need that with a, first year starter, a quarterback. You want to keep him safe. Again, I think this is just another, not a wow pickup, but a solid one that is going to provide you depth and options along that offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you guys have covered it. I mean, it's not much else to say about it. I mean, it's just what it is. Guy's going to be a rotational piece, I think, for this offensive line. We didn't see a very structured 5 guys starting every game last year. I think it could be a little bit similar depending on situations and things like that. So he should get some playing time here and there, but I think he's just a rotational piece at the moment. I mean, it's a good pickup, though.
Yeah. I mean, if he comes in here and he wins a job, great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. If he goes out and takes a job. So we'll see kind of the same thing as Woolard, where he fits in. But feels like not a bad add. And you need more offensive linemen. And they may not be done here. They're still chasing some other ones, some big names.
Yeah, going after Hurd, man. They got it.
So they may not be done as far as offensive line goes. As far as the portal goes in general, probably winding down. Still some names to keep an eye on. Colin and I talked last Thursday about Jake Roberts from Baylor. He visited last week. Feel like Oklahoma's probably in pretty good shape there. The Luttrell connection, going back to North Texas. Keep an eye on that. Be sure to stay plugged in. Oklahoma247sports.com. We'll let you know whenever he makes that decision. Again, we think that's in good shape for Oklahoma. And then, they're still chasing some other big names out there. And so you become a VIP subscriber to make sure you're on top of all that, because Colin's crushing it in the portal right now. So that's it for transfer portal. They stayed hot. It was a heater weekend, tail end of last week into the weekend. 3 commits since last Thursday. And like we said, maybe more to come. So wrapping up the show with some hoops. Tom and I were at the Noble Center on Saturday for the Big 12 opener. Big game. It was basically full in there. A lot of intensity and kind of spotlight on that team against Iowa State, because obviously football's over. So a lot of people are just that's where they kind of shift over to hoops. Like, okay, let's see what this team is about a little bit. And it was a big game. It was a hard-fought game against Iowa State, but Oklahoma found a way to get it done, 71-63. Sooners are 1-0 in Big 12 play. It's a game you had to have. Iowa State is really good, but in the Big 12, you have to win your home games. You have to. The conference is just too tough to not. And they did just that, got off on the right foot. Sam Godwin was a monster. J.V. McCollum was really good again. Team effort overall. Tom, you and I were there. This is a really good win for Oklahoma, and they needed this to get off on the right foot in Big 12 play. The schedule this week is daunting, so to get 1-0, it felt really important. It really as important as an early January game could feel, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, look, on paper, this is the best resume-building win for Oklahoma so far this season. Iowa State entered with one of the best defenses in the country. They were number 9 in net rankings, so this is a quad 1 win for them.
Mm-hmm.
They dropped to number 12 after Oklahoma beat them. So Oklahoma's a top 20 team in net right now. They just moved up to number 9 in the AP poll, second time in the top 10 this week. So they're going to have a top 10 matchup at Kansas on Saturday. That's obviously going to be their, toughest test of the season. But before that, going down to TCU, which is another quad 1 opportunity. So Big 12 play is going to be a gauntlet. It's going to be a grind. It's a deep, talented conference. You're going to have a lot of, NCAA tournament resume building opportunities over these next couple months. But I was impressed with what we saw from them Saturday night. They didn't trail until the final, 5 minutes of the game. And even then they only trailed by 1 a couple times.
They got it
dicey there. But, unlike what we saw last season where they kind of crumbled down the stretch of some games, I think they were 2-5 in, 2 possession games in Big 12 play. They came through down those final 4 minutes. J.V. McCollum, again, he's been such a great scorer for them this year. And again, he led the team in scoring with 15 the other night. But then when it mattered, Iowa State was kind of zeroing in on him, and he became a distributor. He got 3 straight assists, 2 to Sam Godwin, 1 to Latrey Darard. Key 7-0 run that really was the difference maker in this game. And then they made their free throws down the stretch. And I know that's been an issue in some of these other games, like the UNC game. They didn't shoot great from the free throw line. But the way that they grinded that game out and showed resolve down the stretch, like Los Uzan said, it's a big jump for this team from where they were a year ago.
I mean, that's an understatement. I mean, this is this is a very different team. I mean, they're in the midst of being, one of the top teams in the country. I mean, they're number 9 now. That just came out, number 9.
Yeah,
so
9.
I mean, there's only one other unbeaten team. So I mean, there's only one unbeaten team, and OU has 1 loss. So it's just they're really, really good. I mean, it's just no other thing to say. From the outside looking in, I see a lot of Josh's videos. I see the LNC. The LNC is looking really, really good. A lot of people are there, which is exciting. Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what OU has wanted since they hired Porter Moser. Getting a guy like that who had a lot of success in March Madness at a smaller program, getting a guy like him, getting the guys he wants to come in and play this well. This is exactly what everybody wanted. So, I mean, this is outstanding. This is outstanding. I think a lot more OU fans should pay attention to what's going on, because this team really does have a chance come March. Really, they really do.
I love the depth. The depth, something we've talked about before, but it was on display in this game because Ortega-Owa, who was their highest scorer coming in, didn't hit a shot. 0 from the field in this game. It was in foul trouble. Now he got to the line a few times. So he got some points. He contributed. Don't get me wrong, but the fact they overcame that with bench guys. Rivaldo Suarez was great off the bench. He was crashing the glass everywhere. He was an animal. And then Latrey Darthard, who's been you're waiting for him to kind of break out, hits 3 big threes in this game. A couple of them were at really key moments in the second half. Lo Suzan was great. Like I said, Sam Godwin he is so much fun because he can't really shoot it. He's not going to put it on the floor. He doesn't have these skills that pop off, but he just works his tail off. He just will not be denied. That was a walk-on last year. Walk-on, which is crazy because he's their starting 5 and he's been great this year. Hughley off the bench. They have so much more depth than they've had by a wide margin. It's such a cliche that Porter says the 8 starters thing, but it's really kind of true. I mean, at the end of the game, 3 starters were on the bench for a lot of it with Jalen Moore, Ortega-Owa, and then I can't remember who else was sitting a lot toward the end of the game because Suarez was out there, Hughley was out there, and they were all just playing really well. It's been fun to watch. They got a fun team, and big week ahead at TCU on Wednesday, and then at Kansas on Saturday. Kansas number 3 in the AP poll. So that's a top 10 matchup in Lawrence this weekend. Tom and I are planning to get up there. Hopefully, if things fall the right way, I'd like to get up there. OU's last trip to the Fog, haven't won there in about 1,000 years. So maybe Oklahoma can end the drought on Saturday. Should be a fun one. Big week for OU Hoops. That's a big win on Saturday there. So, James, can you explain to me the women's team at all? Because they're very strange. They ended non-conference play with that loss to Southern, which was just awful. I mean, there's just no spinning it. And they're 3-0 in Big 12. They won on Saturday since Cincinnati. They're 3-0 to start Big 12 play. Jenny Baranczyk, man. Never count them out, I guess.
I mean, the case was, the first 2 losses in that non-conference that really, made a turn for the worse. I think they only won 1 of 6 the last, 6 games of that non-conference schedule. Those 2 were really, there's really good losses because they were to ranked teams. And a couple of other ones were teams that became to be ranked in the poll and things like that. So they weren't just awful losses. There was 1 or 2 in there that were really bad. But other than that,
Southern.
There weren't a lot of awful losses. And then the Big 12 schedule, I think it worked out in their favor because of they're getting the newcomers to the conference first. That's who they were getting the first 3 games, and they're all they're 0-9, I think, in throughout the season. So they're just not very good. And so OU can kind of use that to get their rhythm back, get back to what they were, get back in the win column. And that's what they've done. They're 3-0 now, and now they have to head to Kansas State, who will be their really big test. I think they're number 11 in the country. They may have moved since the last time I saw the poll rankings, but Kansas State is really, really good. And that's where we're going to really see. Where is this OU team at? Are they where we thought they were at the beginning of the year when they had that 6-0 run to start the season, or are they kind of falling apart a little bit here? So that's going to be the most fun thing. How are they going to handle Kansas State?
For sure. No, that's a big test coming up later this week. And just when you kind of thought okay, it might be a rough year, 3-0 Big 12 play. We'll see where they go from there. Like you said, the schedule's been friendly, but after that Southern game, we kind of felt oh boy, but 3 straight wins. So there you go. Yeah. We'll see where they go from here. All right, I think that's it for now. We'll be back on Thursday. Get Colin Kennedy in here for a lot more recruiting talk, transfer portal, stuff like that. As we move through January, like we said, OU hoops, both teams playing well. Big 12 play is off and running, so be sure to dive into that while both teams cover. James on the women's side, Tom on the men's side, me as well. And like I said, we're maybe going to get to Lawrence on Saturday. That'll be wild if we do. Oklahoma and Kansas up there at fall. It's a big week of hoops ahead here on Sooners Illustrated. Football never stops, and basketball's in there as well now.
Also, shout out to Sahara Williams for her, career day, 18 points, a freshman post. I mean, she's another player you want to watch. I mean, she's on the come up. So good game from her in that last game that they won there.
Yeah, 100% on the come up. Got some young players. It's a bit of a rebuild. A lot of their players were there before that you recognize they moved on. Their careers are over. Mm-hmm. But they got things building. They're not going to be down for long. They're not even that down with 3-0, but they're not. They'll be back to that high ranking stuff before too long. Jamie Baranczyk knows what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's it. Like I said, we'll be back on Thursday. Sooners Illustrated Podcast. Catch us then. For Tom Green, James Z. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys Thursday right back here on the Sooners Illustrated Podcast.
See you.